15.
15. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Not planning yet.
Planning, yeah. Move on to couple of questions. Anyone?
Yeah. The biodiversity committee met on the 9th of November. In the committee minutes, 5C, it talks about the river quality project, and that there was going to be a project group meeting to take place in December with Felton Parish, which would seek to establish a central coordinating group. I was just saying, can you confirm that this Felton Parish meeting took place?
Losing track, there's been so many meetings with them. But yes, we are working with CAM and other groups.
Right, so can you remember who attended the Felton Parish, from Felton Parish Council to that meeting?
I was there.
So was the central coordinating group established at that meeting?
I think it's still in coordination. Being coordinated.
So it's still being worked on?
Yeah.
So, do you know if there's going to be any, if there's a group established, is there going to, what legal entity is this group going to have?
Doesn't have one currently. It's called the Coquet River Action Group ongoing, which is what we've decided on.
So can you tell me that again, Gemma, sorry, what's the name of it?
It's Coquet River Action Group.
River Action.
So obviously currently it doesn't have a legal entity, but will be the new group that is coordinating, the central coordinating group, will that have a legal entity?
Currently, well, as it's on the agenda, we're going to be asking Felton Parish Council to overhead it, because if it is to carry on and be successful, then we'll be looking at doing that. But currently, all of the funding and things has been granted to us as a loose group from the Environmental Agency, and it hasn't been, it's not completely necessary as it is, but it's a work in progress at the moment. But
So was that money that was raised?
there's no money involved with it.
No, the grant.
There's no grants involved with
Because
it.
I know the Rothbury WI had actually given funding for a grant, because Felton Thurston WI had been asked if they would be interested in, joining sort of this thing. So I'm reporting back to the committee. So I'm aware that Rothbury had for a grant, but obviously that's something maybe that you know about. Okay.
So what's the question about Rothbury? So is this on the agenda for me to be doing an update on this?
It is, yeah.
We are
Yeah.
later
So-
on, yeah.
Sorry.
One of the sets of minutes that have already come out refers to Rothbury WI women applying for £4,000 grant. That's already in the minutes.
Yeah.
So the question is, because it's the agent we all talked about is talking about finance and funding. So what we're asking is, have they applied as a WI at Rothbury?
So they applied as a WI. They were not successful with this.
Right.
Is that the question that you're
Yeah,
asking?
well, no, that's fine, and know that we're on that. So, has there been any minutes about the water project?
Yes, distributed between the people that are involved with it have been, yes.
Right, so I can ask for them from the
Can I just ask a question on that then? So if there's been minutes produced, shouldn't they be actually here as relevant documents, because you're about to talk about Parish Council?
We
We
haven't agreed to anything yet.
I'm simply asking.
So I'm simply
Put an
replying.
item on the agenda.
We haven't.
which
Yeah, but we have
Gemma's just explained that we're looking for the parish council to take the lead on this. So I'm just asking the question, have you already had
At
meetings?
which point I'm going, yes, I will provide the minutes to the parish council.
So at the moment, they don't have those minutes, so that when you discuss them, then they won't be aware of them prior to this meeting.
No.
Right, okay. Right, well, that's basically that one. The next item is the item 10, the neighbourhood plan. The most garages, following the parish council's neighbourhood plan post on Facebook and subsequent unanswered questions by the public. What consultations have there been between Felton Parish Council and NCC since the project was put on hold by NCC?
No, there was an informal meeting with Rob Murphy.
No, but since
But
that was the
was the cut-off,
before that was agreed.
we've not had any.
That was before they came to a resolution with us. So since they resolved the
Right.
project on hold, we haven't had any meetings.
Right,
I mean,
so,
we've sort of loosely undertaken to look at land
Yeah, but that was part of
allocation,
that.
Yeah, that was
That was
part
part
of
of
the
that.
particularly for social housing, but other than that,
But that was part of that agreement, so it wasn't
Yeah.
a serious that
yeah,
agreement.
yeah.
so, the next part would, do the parish council intend to raise the plight of the garages and their future, as it won't be long until the 18 months holding period is up? As we know, things move very slowly within the council, so I think because of people's concerns, well, you've only got about another 5-6 months before, before things are.
I think it's on hold indefinitely because what I was saying is that the parish council, as part of its neighbourhood plan, has been asked to explore alternative locations for affordable housing within Felton because NCC believe there to be a need. And we have been informed by the head of planning at NCC that the garages will be put on hold pending that assessment, that neighbourhood plan process, and that if it turns out that the neighbourhood plan is unable to identify any alternative land, at that point NCC will have to revisit the garages as a site, but they haven't. The 18 months was mentioned early in the process, but then it became a more indefinite while the neighbourhood plan is pending.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
Right, so obviously looking at neighbourhood plans, then they can take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years depending on whatever is actually within that. Is it possible that you could actually ask NCC, as there is a waiting list and there has been for a number of years, how much income has been lost to NCC in the last 5 years due to the under occupancy? I think you've been here previously saying that you can't get a bigger garage. You were aware that the garages are,
That's not those empty.
no, but there's a number empty and they're not filling those garages.
I think
So-
the better question for NCC would be, are they going to open the garages to let, rather than the loss of funding to NCC has minimal impact on Felton Parish Council.
Is it?
I said minimal, not saying it doesn't have an impact,
Yeah.
but minimal, because at the end of the day, if they let those garages again, that's better for Felton Parish Council.
Correct, so if that would be agreeable, then
Yeah, we
you're
can,
taking to actually ask.
we can ask the question to see what's happening, if they intend on it, if they keep on, or are they keeping it on hold,
Well,
whilst the other neighbourhood plan sort of stuff is getting through the works.
well, like I say, because the neighbourhood plans take a while, then there's people who could be utilising garages for.
Yes,
2 to
definitely.
5
I think
years.
it's a good question to ask them.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay. We'll move on. Co-option to vacancies. To fill the vacancy arising from the resignation. We've received one applicant issued out to us. Is everyone satisfied with it and want to, if we put it to vote to co-opt
Yep.
Peter Cadman? Mind blank. Yep. Happy. Do you
I have already.
Can I do the secret handshake?
Oh yeah.
I'm no longer the newest parish councillor. It's only taken a year.
Oh. I knew it was happened, but there's a few of them around.
Yeah, you didn't want to get the wrong one.
There's a great thing, so you can't tell that it's this.
You did that, yeah. We have rules between two.
Don't believe I have to read those.
On the other.
That's what I said. There was between two.
Perfect. Welcome, Peter. Minutes of previous meetings. Has everyone had a chance to read them? Yeah. Just one, 2 point out was she contact.
No, not this.
Not on this. Okay, that's fine.
Hello, Ian.
Hello, Ian. So, everyone happy with the minutes? Or any questions? We welcome to approve. Yeah.
Just put them in and put their heads down.
Everyone happy to go minutes?
Oh, yeah, last one.
Yep. Good. Any reports from council on?
Nope.
Nope. Anything from the police? Nope.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
No,
Oh,
no.
sure. No reports from Councillor Thorne and no reports from Northumbria Police.
Thank you.
Perfect. To receive financial summary and budget monitoring 30th of Jan.
Alan and I are in the process of working on something, but it came in late and I hadn't done it in time for the agenda, so
Yeah.
your report that you sent me through to
The-
compare with this, I
It's a
haven't had
different
a
format.
chance yet.
Actually, I noticed a mistake in it this
Oh,
evening, so.
sorry.
No, in mine.
Oh,
And yes.
Yeah. It was only £300, but I noticed I did find a mistake in it.
okay.
I've got some questions.
Yeah.
Is anyone else worried about the financial position of the cemetery, the FCJC, Felton Cemetery Joint Committee? Because the way it seems to me, things aren't going all that well. Do you want me to go through it? I mean, the figures are here in the budget report. Now, I'm prepared to accept I made a mistake here somewhere, but I've been looking at it and I can't see it at all. So, basically, the income to the Cemetery Joint Committee is now, against budget, is nearly £6,000 below the budget. Now, some of that, the budget is for the whole year, and the income that we've actually had is only for 3/4 of the year, rather than the whole of the year. But it's still out by a fair bit. We haven't had in the fees that we were looking for, and we've spent, well, we haven't, in terms of income, we haven't had the fees that we're looking for. So that seems like, and there haven't been in the parish contributions, which hopefully are going to be coming in the last quarter.
Basically.
Right, okay. Well, if you then look at the expenses, we're quite a way over budget. I mean, we've got a budget of £7,400, payments year to date 15,034. So, we've already taken £8,300 out of reserves, but that coupled with the shortfall in the income leaves us 13 grand out. So that seems to me to be a problem.
Yeah, sorry, what's the last bit you left?
So we've got, we have a budget of 7,400.
Yeah.
We have had payments so far this year of 15,000,
Yeah.
sorry, to the end of December, not
Yeah.
so far. This is up to the end of December.
Yeah.
We've had payments out of 15,034.
Yeah.
we've already taken £8,300 from general reserves for the parish council.
From the cemetery.
For the cemetery to top up the funds.
Yeah.
But overall, if you look at the shortfall of income of £6,000 and the shortfall of over 7,000 of expenses, or the overspend of 7,000 of expenses, that's us 13 grand over the 13,000 out, which seems worrying to me. Extremely worrying. Sorry and all, but
No, it has been. We have. I would say it is accurate what you're saying in that fees are down. So when we have calculated the fees, the fees are the expected income is effectively an average of the last sort of 10 years. And it is true, burials have been dropping off, so we're not hitting that average target of what we're expecting. It's really difficult to predict because there was a year, a few years back, where we got 10 burials. That was a lot, 10 plots were purchased. That was a really bumpy year in terms of fee income. And then we've had a few years where there's been 1 or 2 burials, and unfortunately we've had a few years in a row where it's been very low on that.
still out.
It is. There hasn't been any. There is expense, a large amount of expense this year.
I'm not.
So the big expenditure figure has been the purchase of the new bench for the cemetery, but also the new benches for the war memorial. So although those come out of the cemetery budget, they are. The reason we do it through the cemetery, the reason we do them through the cemetery budget is because all 3 parish councils also contribute to costs at the war memorial, so it makes sense to have it under the same umbrella with the 3 councils working together.
No, I quite understand that.
So we haven't really put, in my time here, this is the first real expenditure year that we've made over and above just general running costs. So the benches in there were really in dire need. We're taking out the one, I don't know how well you know the cemetery, but if you walk down through the cemetery, past the crossroads, and then on the right hand side where there's the unknown section behind you, you've got a bench there that's a memorial bench, and it's really poor quality. So unfortunately it hasn't meant that we've had to expend. I think generally, I think this is a problem that there's a lot of parish councils are seeing, that there just isn't, they are a bit of a sinking pot, cemeteries now. I think there seems to be much more of a trend, like Hazel feels that she sees much more of a trend towards ash cremations, and then people either put maybe just a memorial plaque in, or they have their ashes put in the cemetery, but they're not. There has generally been a decline, a trend of less interest in burials. Now it leaves us with it does leave us with a bit of a problem, because that's why this money has been mentioned a couple of times. The £10,000 put aside for new cemetery, that was put aside when the cemetery. There was a few years where there was a big cemetery. There was a lot of activity. There was a lot of burials took place, and they thought they wanted to put money aside because they thought they would run out of room. Now that's looking like a massive unlikelihood, because it's just the trend has just dropped off. And I think this is a problem facing quite a few parish councils, because we're in a position that it is a duty, it's a statutory responsibility on ourselves to maintain the cemetery, and the same, alongside Newton on Moor and Thurston.
But isn't that what the precept is for?
Yes.
Is to make up the shortfall of income over expenditure.
Exactly. So this year we have spent a bit of money because we've had maintenance, we've had a new mower to purchase and so on. Now we are expecting, so you'll see that there is a shortfall in the general reserves. Now we are expecting in a VAT refund for the benches and the mower. So there's quite a chunk of money to come back in on VAT, and there's also the 2 contributions. So I think we have got more income due by the year end, but generally I agree that there is a trend that the cemetery is costing us more than it's earning. So it is being now subsidised, whereas previously in years gone by it did pay for itself because of the number of burials. Now the 3 councils are subsidising the cemetery. We have put the budget up, so for the forthcoming financial year, the cemetery budget has been increased, so that each parish council will be putting in more on basically on account of outgoings. So the parish contributions that will be coming in have been increased, and therefore that is coming in from precept because Felton's obviously, but
So,
the cemetery income's been budgeted higher, so the parish council will be putting more into the cemetery pot.
the coming financial
So,
year.
so the
Yeah,
precept, so that's coming from precept, so it is. So basically the taxpayers in the village are subsidising the cemetery, but it's a really difficult thing to get rid of because we would have to, haven't looked into it, but I understand it's very, very difficult to close the cemetery because there's an obligation to provide burial spaces.
Right. Well,
So,
it's more about covering my house as a parish council.
No, it's
frankly.
fine, it's fine,
Because
and I
we've
think
all located these expenses,
Yeah.
yet we completely.
It is.
we-
it is, and I do agree that we are at the point where that's why we've put the budget up for the cemetery so that the parish councils will contribute more. So it is coming out of precept because there is a general trend towards it not being sustainable. But
The other thing was that we agreed the budget before the salary increases went through.
Yeah.
this year, yeah, we did, yeah.
Okay,
So
so
the
that,
salaries are out of kilter with
so
what
the
we
salaries
expected.
are out because of the, right,
Yeah.
okay. What I'm concerned about really is that, we've already taken £8,300 out of the reserves for the parish council.
Yeah.
We've got another,
It's not out of the parish
No,
council
but-
reserves, it's out of the general reserves from the
From the cemetery. But
No,
Alan,
it's
the
out.
thing is, Alan,
it's
the thing is, so
well, how come that isn't in the figures then? The cemetery committee figures are £12,418.37. I mean, we've taken,
yeah, but then if you look at the general reserves
General
underneath,
reserves
they're the
underneath.
reserves of the cemetery. So
so
yes,
what is,
we're only
what-
9 months through the year, Alan, but if I can just come on to that point, we're 9 months through the year, but a lot of the costs take place during the summer. So the grounds maintenance, we've already paid the grounds maintenance, which is an expense this year. We've already paid the most of it. So currently, in the current year, though we have talked about changing it so it's a regular payment through the year, the grounds maintenance staff costs are higher in the summer months because there's more grass cutting going on. This month there hasn't been any grass cutting, there's no salary to pay. The same will probably be true in February.
so we're not looking at big expenditure
I
for the
don't,
fourth
from now, no, we're not. The fourth
Right.
quarter's really very quiet. There's nothing very much. So
But
I
that
think these will be
money's-
quite steady now to the end of the year.
That money of general reserves, that's not, so we've
Those
taken that out, so there's 8,000 come out of that, and so we're really running down the reserves.
We are running down the reserves. That's where the money's come from. But we're running down the reserves, but if you remember, I've just said that there's money due to come in because we've got contributions still to come in from the other two parishes, and we've also got a VAT return to come in.
Are the other parishes aware of the expense over?
Yes, because
the
they're
overspend?
because this money, these yes, because they attend the cemetery committee meetings where these figures are also presented.
How much are you anticipating coming in
From the
from
I
the
can't
VAT and
I
the
can't tell you the VAT off the top of my head, but there is still, so if you look at these two figures here, John, you can see on the screen what I'm saying, that's Felton's contribution. So it's whatever the difference is between those two monies still to come in from the other two parish councils, so 2.5?
2.5 grand?
Yeah.
And then
And
where's
then
the
VAT,
where's the amount claim back from the VAT?
the VAT will be,
It'll be in that blue folder.
so recoverable VAT,
1,200.
1,200.
So 3,000. So you're 600 quid out.
So plus 1,200, and I think there might be slightly, There might be
This is, I mean, this is part of the problem of not producing a balance sheet for the council,
But when
because we don't know.
but when that comes in, you're minus 4 grand.
Well, that's
If
not
all
an
that comes
income, really. I mean, that money's gone out. We treated it as an expense, but as
But
an
it's not-
expense after that. So all
Right.
that is a chunk of
Yeah.
money that we're going to get back.
Yes.
It's
But
going to
the
go
allocate-
into the current.
But the allocated is.
yeah, but I'm not allowed to do
Yeah.
this. You know, I said the question through about that you asked about the that I asked the auditor of, that we're not allowed to net that off. So we have to show it as an expense and an
I'm not
income,
suggesting-
even though actually, no, I'm just saying. So that's why it goes on both sides.
I'm not suggesting you net it off. I'm suggesting that you treat the VAT paid as an asset.
No, I'm not allowed to do that. I've asked the external auditor. I have to
Did
treat
you
it.
ask?
Yes, I can show you. I asked,
That's because we use this cash book method of
which is
accounting.
what we're supposed to use under the.
Are we obliged to use that, or can we use some more business-like and streamlined method of?
We can, but it's more complicated to do. It's more complicated to do income and expenditure accounting. It's less complicated to do income and receipts. the receipts and payments, which is why we recommend receipts and payments for small council. If we were to go to the other system, we would have to redo all our accounts from last year as well. I think it would be
Why from last year?
because you have to show 2 years in the same format.
Right.
So we
it's
have
not. Okay, this is one to carry on discussing because I don't think these figures really. They add up. Everything balances. I've checked it myself. I spent hours checking through it myself. But these do not represent the financial position we're in.
Well, they do though, because
Well, in an incredibly roundabout and confusing sort of way.
Really?
I'm not pointing the finger at you.
no, I don't
This is
understand. I don't understand
involved
what.
over years.
I don't understand what a balance sheet would show more, because you have got a balance column, you've got a balance column, you can see how much we have left in our budget and how much we have in reserves, and the general reserves is a minus figure, but that's going to, as John's pointed out, that's going to mostly come back in.
But then we're going to be left with zero.
No, you're going to be left with minus £600.
Which could be transferred out of the new cemetery fund of 10,525. So we're not going to be at zero. We're going to be at 12,400.
But the benches that were purchased for the war memorial this year aren't going to get done next year. Neither is the new bench that's getting put in.
Sorry,
There's not
hang
gonna
on,
be
they're not going to get done.
You're not buying them again. So
Oh,
next,
no,
so,
right,
so, the,
okay.
so the dint in the
No,
reserves.
I realise that, but it's still part of us going over budget, seriously going over budget. Basically, we
I'm
couldn't
gonna have the railings all painted,
Railings painted.
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
needed to be maintained.
whatever. The point is that we've gone over budget. The whole point of the budget is can we afford it or not? And the way these accounts look to me, we couldn't afford it.
We
We
can,
had the cash.
well,
We had the cash, but that's not the same
But
thing.
you need to look at that in the fourth quarter to see whether you might give a budget.
Yeah.
We're
But
seriously
What
over
I'm
budget
saying is
at the
I
moment.
expect-
if we had those payments in at the start of the year, okay,
We would
you
be-
probably wouldn't be asking this question because you would go, right, it's a small deficit.
Income versus expenditure, profit and loss, those questions I'd be asking. They wouldn't be any
Okay,
different.
but that's easily explained by the cemetery is not making the income through burials that it would normally.
So
We've
it's
had a business open right on our doorstep, which is flourishing with because there's been such a
Yeah,
high
no,
demand
no, I'm
for
not-
that in the area.
I'm not talking about the details, I'm talking about the overall system that we're using to monitor this and to make our decisions.
I know you don't like
I've signed that off,
the way
and I
it's
shouldn't
done,
have done.
but it works. It has worked for.
But why should you sign them
Last-
off, Alan? I object to that statement because you were saying is that all of the figures are correct. You're asked to do a bank reconciliation. It's not
I'm not questioning
No, I
the
know. It's not,
integrity
but what I'm
of the-
saying is it's not a review of the accounts as a system. You're being asked to do. You're asked to reconcile the accounts, and if you say that all of the payments are correct and they match the bank statements, that's a reconciliation, and you should have signed them off. I don't think you need to say that you shouldn't have signed them off.
I'm not questioning the integrity of the accounting system. I've checked it myself, it balances, it's correct. What I'm questioning here is that we okayed these expenses, and I was part of it, that have taken the cemetery way over budget.
At this position right now.
I think we
But
should,
at the end of the year, it will balance minus £600.
I think,
So you need
Which is
to look at the 12
yeah, but
months.
we've still used up most of the reserves, in fact all of it.
We've used up our general reserves, but the thing is,
And the ones in,
but
in
the
for
maintenance
the
is,
Baron Strim and all that stuff.
but the maintenance
No, that's
is,
still there.
the maintenance is
Well, not all
needed.
spent, right?
The maintenance is needed. You know, there hasn't been any expenditure in 7 years on furniture for the cemetery. There hasn't been any expenditure for 7 years because I haven't so
Okay, I
so
accept that.
what we're saying is we need to do it, and the trouble is the only way to do it is for the basically the parish councils to subsidise it through the precept, which is what is happening next year, because there is it is running at a loss. The cemetery runs at a loss, but
No,
it
I
still needs
understand that.
yeah.
I understand.
Right.
It's not that part that I'm questioning.
Okay.
It's not that. It's not the integrity of the accounts I'm questioning. What I'm questioning is the fact that we've gone seriously over budget, which isn't
Well, £600 isn't seriously over budget.
because we spent the reserves. Income versus expenses, we've gone over budget. We've spent
What's the
reserves.
deficit?
Spent your savings
So
account.
yes, so there is a deficit. We have spent
The
more. We
deficit-
have
spent-
spent more than came in. But the reason we've spent more than came in is because we bought benches which needed for benches that needed replacing.
I understand all that. I understand all that.
So you
but
wouldn't have
we've
okayed-
used up our reserves,
Okay,
haven't we?
We have.
Have we used up our reserves?
We're using
We
all
have.
the
reserves
We have used
Yes.
to buy assets.
We didn't have any reserves for chairs.
We had general reserves.
We had general reserves. We've got this weird new cemetery fund. We've got no balance sheet to represent the financial position we're in.
We have got a balance sheet, Alan. This is it. Look, the current balance. You can see a list
It's-
of balances. What's the problem with that?
We're just going to go round and round in
I
circles.
don't, I'm
I-
really trying to get what you're wanting.
I don't understand what you
I need a clearer system. If I'm to be putting my neck on the line, to be taking responsibility for these expenditures, which you are as a parish councillor, I need a much clearer system.
What do you want?
Right, so you do, again, you're voicing your dissatisfaction at the balance sheet because you don't like it.
I think we
But that balance sheet has worked for this parish council since I was on it. It
I
works.
think this
It's
system, this system has
There's
evolved
maybe a
over
bit of
years.
an understanding of it that you're
I'm not
struggling
sure it
with.
does work. I mean, I think there's all kinds of aspects of it which we don't need to discuss today, but which I think need serious consideration because I don't think this system works.
What is it? What information are you missing that you need?
How much we do in VAT? We need proper balance sheet, assets and liabilities. How much we do in VAT? How much expenses are coming in from? We are expecting in from the other parish councils.
That's on the sheet. Both of those figures are on the sheet. Recoverable VAT 1279. Recoverable VAT for the.
As a balance sheet, rather than in this format where it is all lumped in with income and
Okay.
expenses.
The issue is, I raised that question a couple of years ago, and the asset register, the value of the asset versus what it's really worth, you know, there isn't a depreciation.
Yeah, but you don't have to. You can go with a system like that and still show those assets.
But you can't show depreciation.
Yeah, we don't depreciate, do we? I don't think there's any. So
No,
it's the
no
parish
depreciation.
council.
Well, no, but
There's no
but when you
depreciation.
but when you get to an issue like this.
But I'm not talking about
No, but when-
asset as in physical assets. I'm talking as in that
Yes,
we
but
do,
when you-
money that we do from the other parish councils. We made this bizarre payment of
There is an anticipation.
£4,742.76, which
Yes.
went out, which was an income and no money changed hands.
No,
It's just a purely paper exercise of
because it's the
moving
contribution.
it between one bit of the accounts and the other.
Yes.
Because it's
Because
not
that's
parish
Because
council
it's-
contribution to the cemetery fund.
Towards the running costs of the cemetery. So the cemetery gets an invoice. So let's say it's £100 for painting the fence. Now, we could treat it as the cemetery gets the invoice, and I send the copy of the invoice to each of the 3 parish councils and say, please pay me your 33%, your 30, it's not exactly 33, it depends on the electoral numbers, but your 26%, your 42%, your whatever
Can I
percent it is. Or what we do is we say, please pay us this amount in advance, and then when the invoices come in, I will defray those invoices from the monies that I'm holding that you've contributed. Felton's share of the contribution is 1,742. That amount has been
Well,
calculated.
That was the question I was going to ask later on, actually. Where does that number come from? How do we work that out?
That money comes from the cemetery budget, so I'm not sure. But, so the cemetery budget, we do the same budget process. We work out what we think we're going to expend. That's based on averages. We work out what we think we're going to receive. That's based on averages. We find out the balance, and we say to the cemetery committee, to the 3 parish councils, right? We think we're going to get fee income of this much. This is going to leave a shortfall of this much for the expenses. Let's say it's £5,000. Each of you are going to pay that £5,000 in the proportions based on your electoral numbers, because it's not fair for all of the councils to pay an equal share, because obviously some councils are bigger than others. So at the moment, Felton and Newton are pretty much the same size, and Thurston's a little bit smaller. So Felton and Newton on Swarland are paying the same amount, and
So
Thurston's
roughly as a percentage, what do we
we're
contract?
about 40%,
Roughly.
we're about 40%,
About
and Thurston's about
40%.
20%.
Because 1,742 is about 10% of what we spent. Payments year to date 15,034.
Yes, because I could have written, we could, when we pay the benches, we could have written to each of the parish councils and said, please put your proportion in.
No, I'm
We've
not
spent
talking about the benches, I'm talking about, so in that case, we've still got to find 22%. We've already paid 10%, we
Which
paid
is
roughly
roughly
30%, so
This
we've got to
year.
find 20% of
No, we
that 15
haven't.
grand.
No, we haven't, because it's being paid out of the general reserve. The reserves that the cemetery holds are divided between the 3 parish councils. We started the year with £9,000. We started the year with £12,000 in allocated reserves and £9,000 in unallocated reserves. Now, that 21 grand wasn't held by Felton for Felton. It was held by Felton on behalf of Felton, Newton and Thurston in set proportions. So when an invoice comes in over and above the budget, it's coming out of there in the same shares as any expenditure.
So that's in the budget. That's in the budget. What about the actual? What about what we've actually spent and the income that we've actually had?
It's going into the cemetery's pot and being shared out in proportions based on electoral.
Look, I'm
numbers.
boring everybody here. Shall we just
I'm not
stop
saying
this
anything.
entire conversation and I can consider just how unhappy I am with these accounts?
I'm just going to say this now. I volunteered to do the job you're doing at the moment when I first joined the parish council, and I had to hand the file back.
Well, this is part of my problem.
I was so, like, literally going through the numbers, I was finding it so stressful and things like that. And I did figure, yes, that makes sense and this makes sense, but it's not easy to look at. And for somebody, myself, and even on a real piece of paper, those numbers do that to me. And I find that really difficult to look at. And I got my head around how it is working and things. And I'm like, well, if it's what we're used to and it's working and things, you know, I'm happy for it to do, but I totally understand that it is incredibly difficult to kind of look at and get your head around it. And I don't like it, and I will never volunteer to take that folder again because it would cause that much stress. And I completely can see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, but that's no.
Yeah, but no, that was just my starting bit. And I think, yeah, we are spending money that have been anticipating coming in, and I think the fact that we are sharing this resource and this, you know, this responsibility with other parishes as well, it does complicate it and things. And I think you're completely right in saying that we are spending money that we don't have. Is this issue that we have with the cemetery income that we're actually getting from it, which is has changed so dynamically over the past few years. We are going to have to look at it, because it's like we say, we need to make sure that this is sustainable and whatnot, and put a plan forward going forward. And what we're doing, like predicting with the income that's coming into it, is going to have to. We're going to have to look at it more like as a tighter over an average over the past couple of years rather than over the past decade now, because things have changed so significantly. And I am going to agree with Alan that this is an issue, but I think we do need to look at it separately outside the meeting that's happening tonight.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's hijacking the meeting, but I'm not going away from this habit, frankly.
No, and we've talked about it. I've said that we can change it, but I just don't. I don't.
Well, I can make lots of suggestions.
Yeah.
I used to be director of a company that turned over £7.5 million a year, whose accounts were way simpler than this. Way simpler. And I employed 300 people. Because it's in this weird, I'm not pointing the finger at you, Claire, but I think this system has evolved over years and it is no longer fit for purpose, is my conclusion to this. And I think we need to address it, because it's taken me hours just to get to this point of understanding, and I still don't understand it. I spent all year trying to figure this out. I still don't understand it. I think I'm not alone in the room in that respect.
No,
I think the only person here who understands it is you, frankly. And I think if anybody ever got asked a question...
I'll confirm my understanding as well.
Right.
Just to put that out there.
Okay. Well,
But
can we move on?
I think that'd be wise.
Yeah.
You've got a question?
A very brief question that
Please.
both
That'd be great.
Thurston and Newman were paid at the end of the year. I think at last meeting they were awaiting invoices for the monies that owe. Is it possible for the councils to actually pay at the beginning of the year so that the money is actually
It would be a good suggestion, yeah. And then that's why I pointed out that if we have that funds in, it's a very different discussion this, because it would just be you don't like the balance sheet rather than there's a massive
There isn't a
hole.
balance sheet. We don't have a balance sheet. There isn't one.
Like We're opening that can again.
So
No,
just to leave
but it
the
would be
discussion,
more about that than the last
just to
half an hour.
leave
of
the discussion on a positive note, if we were to, for every expense that the cemetery incurs, if we were to create an asset of the proportion that is due from the other two parish councils, we can create an asset account which has got that in it. It's not that hard to understand. And the expense to Felton Parish Council goes directly out, then that would be a much clearer way of representing it and explaining it. We have an asset of the money that we're owed, and we have an expense of the money that we have spent from Felton Parish Council for the cemetery's costs. That would make more sense.
There's room for changes on it that we can look at.
Right.
With regards to the suggestion from the Member of the Public, I think maybe asking the Secretary Committee to look at that.
I can happily do that. It's not a problem.
And just, it then saves funds coming out of different places for it. We move on to 8B.
I've got questions about that one as well.
I would be disappointed if you didn't.
Okay, well, one of them's been answered. Sorry if you find this boring. Okay, so there was a sum of £3,060 that went out as an admin fee.
Yeah.
It's not represented in here. Is that because it was?
Was it not the previous one?
It's been made. It was the repaying money
Yeah, it's
from
on the,
the.
it's on
It's
the
on the
previous
previous
meeting.
minute.
The previous meeting.
If you turn to page
Oh,
3.
right. Okay. Right,
Agenda.
okay. The figure for charter surveillance costs. That's a reserve, not a budget. Have we actually? So we paid off the.
Yeah.
Paid off. Doesn't sound right. We paid off GF White.
Yeah.
That was discussed at the last meeting
That was
as well.
discussed. So we paid that.
Yes.
We've got a reserve of 2,924.
Yeah. So we have 924.65 left.
So right. So where's the 924.65 going to go?
That's where we can decide at the year end, I think, what we want to do with it, because it can go
Right.
into a general, it can just go into general reserves.
So are we planning to spend cemetery contributions? So that is a proportion of the expenses
Yeah.
that we are transferring
Portion of the same
internally.
budget, isn't it?
Yes.
A proportion of the budget we're transferring internally
Internally, because
to the section of the accounts which is Felton Cemetery Joint Committee.
Yes.
yes.
We've got a budget of 4,040. So why is it 1,742? Because it's
Because it's only our share. It's only Felton's share.
right.
The income that's the budget on the income, so this number here, is this
It's
what you're talking, 4,370? That's Newton, that's what's it's, that's Newton,
scroll down because it's in the body bit.
is it, sorry, that way?
A bit better.
4,370, that's Felton plus Newton on the Morswood plus Thurston.
Right. So it's not really a cost. Yeah. £1,742 isn't a cost. It's just an internal transfer of money between one account and another.
To Parish Council.
It's like,
So-
yeah, it's still,
It's a cost to Felton Parish Council.
Not to the total accounts because the Felton Cemetery is within the main account.
Yeah,
So
but-
we're just transferring money internally.
But
we're transferring it from one asset code to another asset code, if you're thinking of the money as assets, so we're saying,
You could do that with any amount of money you wanted to, really. It doesn't make a lot of sense, frankly. But
it,
no,
it just keeps it clear that we've paid our contribution.
But we haven't.
Well, we have.
That's it.
That is our contribution.
What about the overspend? We presume we're going to have to stump up more money for the overspend. Sorry,
No,
this is
it's
going
No,
round and round.
it's-
Sorry.
that is coming out of the general reserves of the Felton Joint Cemetery Committee.
So do we need to top up the cemetery reserves, which we're doing in next year's budget?
Their next year's budget might have topped it up some. I can't remember from the budget.
Alan, from what I've just looked at this while you brought it up, from what I can pick out from that document, when everybody else pays their contributions, it's somewhere in the region of about 600 quid out at the end of the year. Currently, it doesn't look very good, but by the end of the financial period, it should be up to minus 600 quid. So I totally understand it is more than we anticipate that we're going to spend. So the 600 comes out of the general reserves, but it's this year. Next year there should be more going in than is coming out, hopefully. But I agree with you. If it is a red number at the end of the year, then you should.
And we
put
need
to see this.
But we have increased.
Yeah.
We have increased the amount that's coming into each of the parish councils.
Yeah. So my question to you would then be, Alan, if I say we, I'm not on that committee, but if they don't foresee any large expenditure next year, and obviously you can't overlook storm damage or
salaries.
or
Salaries is
etc.
quite sizable.
But we've put more in for these things. This is what we're saying. We've increased the
In next
amount.
year's
Yes.
Next year's budget, because
And also, it's got to be an excess of income over expense to top the reserves
That's right.
that we've spent.
That's right.
Right. Okay. All right.
The other thing that we've done is this year we didn't ask for the full 100% from each of the parishes because the balance was high. But next
So
year we're
we-
asking for 100% from all the parishes.
So we footed the bill. For,
No,
Well, I didn't
no.
ask
It
for
came
Everybody
from
footed the
reserves.
bill.
It came from reserves. It came from the cemetery shared
Okay.
reserves.
All right. Okay. All right.
We asked for 65% of the amount this year.
Okay. All right.
But it looks bleak on that document. It doesn't look very good.
But it isn't because basically it's sinking like it's a sinking pot. So the cemetery is no longer paying for itself, and I would say that is the trend that is going to continue. I can't see it picking back up. It hasn't for a few years.
So we're going to get to a point where we need to change the amount paid in annually to shoulder the responsibility of the
All
cemetery.
the three parish councils are going to end up subsidising it further and further to keep it tidy and maintained because it isn't paying for itself anymore.
Right.
As far as I can see, and so unless something drastically changes, but it feels like the trend, and I see this on like the Clark's forums I'm on, that it feels really like the general trend is a move from the population wanting to be buried, which was the traditional, to now most people choosing cremation, possibly for cost reasons.
So what can you do? So if you see a sinking ship, what can you do to save
I
it?
mean, what we could do is I think we have talked about some of these ideas that we could effectively mothball parts of it. Those bits at the back could be permanently turned over into like meadow, or something. At the moment, they kind of are because we only mow them once a year. We've got to maintain round the grade because it's got to look.
It has to look good, but is there a possibility where you could? I mean, do you sell memorial plaque positions?
Yeah, we do all that. Eventually, I mean, I guess this is. I mean, like for example, I know that the church cemetery, the church graveyard. The church graveyard's a closed graveyard because it's full. But I guess eventually that's I don't know, I haven't looked into it, I'll be honest. I don't know what the rules are for closing a cemetery, but potentially there's a point at which you say, we've had one burial in 3 years, let's close it. I don't know, because there is a responsibility, I believe there's a responsibility on parish councils to provide burial areas.
So is there an argument then the churches that have closed churchyards because they're full, can we be asking the churches in the surrounding areas for a donation?
Potentially. I don't know, I haven't looked into any of those sorts of questions, but I think that's possibly where we'll eventually end up going.
I mean, it's still going to cost about £5 grand a year to run the cemetery, to maintain the cemetery. In fact, that's going to cost more than that. And the salaries are £5 grand, £6 grand.
because that's the
Cost of the war memorials. Yeah, but there's still £5 grand.
No, yeah.
There's still going to be £5 grand next year.
But
£6
even
grand.
if we had to shut the cemetery,
You
you would still have that maintenance cost of it because you're not going to, unless you
Unless you
Yeah,
turn
no.
it into a field,
But
which
while
is
it's
Hang on, I'm not
would be
suggesting we shut it.
unacceptable.
I'm trying to get a figure for what it costs over and above what we spent this year.
I just say, I think we do need to wrap this
Cemetery.
as a cemetery up.
Go on forever.
I think it's
what
probably
we need
taking
to
it to a
do
cemetery
is
meeting.
resolve to delegate this back to the Cemeteries Committee to look at ongoing cost sustainability of the cemetery and come up with ideas of why we can deal with that.
Any other questions on payments? we vote to authorise the payments? Yep. Good, we'll close that one out. Right. Wow. Back to the cemetery.
Back to the cemetery, yeah. Back to the cemetery. Cemetery benches. Okay, well, a lot of the questions have been answered that I had.
Yes, yeah.
I still feel that I voted in favour of these expenses, and I now am not happy about having done that. Because of the way that the expenses required by the cemetery, that authority to make that expenditure passed through to Felton Parish Council. Effectively what we did was did payments for approval. That was it. It came up on the 11th of September. There were 2 payments for approval.
That were all discussed at Felton,
The cemetery committee.
Joint cemetery
Joint
committee.
cemetery, they
That were all
discussed
discussed and
yeah,
approved
on the 29th
at
of
those
July.
meetings.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then I made that vote without realising that I could question what the cemetery were deciding, and there was no budget for that expenditure. So I needed to. I should have asked more questions.
You
Frankly, I
could
should have
have
asked
asked
a lot more
the
questions.
question, would it have,
The committee's
the committee
No,
takes
no,
a
The committee
decision.
can make the decision.
I don't know what the right answer to that question is. Of course, you can ask as many questions as you want about it. The committee is put forward to the main council for approval, so they've already decided what they want
I
to
think
spend the money on.
if I
And the parish council were offering a yes or no. Do you want to approve this payment or not?
can I come in on this? I think where the confusion. So I do think this is somewhere that the cemetery committee terms of reference can improve, because the cemetery, in the terms of reference, the cemetery committee has got authority within the budget. The benches were not in the budget, as Alan's previously pointed out, but the cemetery committee then has it's required. It isn't very well worded, because what it says is, before making any significant departure from its budget, the committee shall consult the 3 parish councils. Now, in July, before the benches were ordered and reported back from the cemetery committee, the minutes were included in that agenda pack, and she reported back that the cemetery was planning to buy the benches for the memorial and the benches for the cemetery. Now, there was no resolution passed to approve that at that meeting, but that's what I think is bad about that wording, consult, in the terms of reference, because consulting, it doesn't say requires the agreement of the parish councils, it just says consult the parish council. I think that terms of reference should be amended to say, shall consult and require, an approved resolution for each of the parish councils. I think this is a learning point that hasn't been very clear. So there's an argument both ways. Did they have authority to go ahead? So at the July meeting, when it was reported back to the parish council, and then the cemetery went then and ordered those items and asked for the approval for the actual physical payment to happen in the September meeting. So I get the point Alan's raising, and I think that's one that we can easily correct by making the procedure very clear in the terms of reference to the cemetery committee that this is the procedure that has to be followed, and then there's there's no question over the purchases going forward, and it would have meant that Alan would have been able to sit there and say, yes, I remember making a vote that this was what was being put forward, this was the cost, and it was much more clear than perhaps just Councillor Walton reporting it and it maybe not being noticed.
Because also there's 2 rules too. One in the Joint Cemetery Committee, which is that one that you just said about the consult 3 parishes, but we've also got in the financial regulations, spending greater than budget needs authority. Section 4.2 of the financial regulations. It needs the authority of the council, so we should have authorised it before the expense was made, not afterwards.
Yeah, but what we're saying is that the cemetery committee has the authority to, whether the cemetery committee has the authority to order it, because the cemetery committee assumed that it did have authority because it had raised it at the parish council meeting and then it went ahead to order it. What I'm saying is I think it needs to be clearer that the cemetery committee needs written approval in the form of a resolution, because then that will avoid this question.
So does the cemetery committee trump the parish
If
council
the
as a
Cemetery
whole?
Committee is spending its own budget in accordance with its terms of reference,
What
yes.
if it goes over its budget?
But this is what I'm saying, that it needed to, in the wording of the terms of reference, say, will consult the parish
Okay.
councils. But it doesn't say, but I think that needs to be improved.
Yeah.
But also, I think
What?
Can we resolve to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can resolve, yeah.
Well, we need to consult all three parish councils.
So we'll need to go back to the next cemetery committee meeting to review the terms of reference and get them to sign up to it. Anything else on the matter?
Yeah, there's another one where things sort of clash, which is, it says in the financial regulations, no expenditure can be authorised unless the funds are available. Now, they were available to a very loose definition of the funds being available.
But they're available.
Sort
Loose or
of.
not, loose or not, they're available, yeah?
No, I don't agree. I think there should have been a reserve for spending on... Why wasn't this budgeted? None of this problem would have occurred if this was budgeted.
Because it's a one-off that we've had in the last 7 years, we've never ever had to buy.
You could still budget for it, though.
But then
And that's
this would have been a
okay,
problem.
so
if
it's
we
an
just
oversight,
put-
we didn't have furniture in the budget. Because we've had the same budget for the last umpteen number of years. We didn't have furniture in it because we didn't know we were going to need it at this point.
is that not the point of the general reserve though?
Yeah.
Rather
And that's
than
general
having,
reserve,
rather
yes,
than
you're right.
Yeah, that's
because you
more like
can't put-
working capital rather than a general
Well,
reserve.
so working capital is a good explanation then. You're using working capital to buy things, and you can work it back.
We're also using...
I disagree. I think general reserves are for unexpected expenditure over and above the budget, and I think the working capital is your budget account. So everything that I've got sitting there in a budget, £100 for this, £200 for that, that's my working capital because it's being used.
It was not anticipated at the beginning of the year, was it?
Well, when we set the budget, it certainly wasn't.
No.
Because that's done the October before the April.
So
it's
in
quite a
that
long
case,
way.
the question goes, should we have bought those benches? Should we not? We could have waited another month, put them in the next year's budget and bought them then. No problem.
But at the time the benches were bought, isn't it also possible that the salaries hadn't gone out and therefore there was available funds and it could have all been just done within normal budget and it's only because
No, I
the
still don't
salaries
think
have
the
been
funds
paid
were
since
available.
then.
I still don't think the funds were available.
Then anything that you want to do out of the ordinary maintenance schedule, you have to leave till the end of the year so you can approve it in the next budget. So nothing will get done.
And it's
Yeah.
not even the
No,
next
no,
budget.
everything would get done that you
It's not
budgeted
even the
for
next
in the
budget,
year.
You're working a year and a half ahead.
If we'd had an excess of income over expenditure for the year, which we haven't, then we could have considered it then. But I still don't think the funds were available. We can't use the general reserve as a budgeting get out of jail free card.
What's the purpose of the general reserve?
Working capital.
No,
To
it's not
tide
working
us over, to
capital.
keep enough money
It's
in.
not working capital.
until we get the money.
It's not working capital, Alan. It's not working capital, Alan, because
It's to bolster
it's not
shortfalls
working
in the budget.
capital. So
The general reserve is to bolster a shortfall in the anticipated budget because of over expenditure. You're not bankrupting you're not bankrupting the cemetery.
this is my work.
So you have to have a general reserve just
Right.
in case you go over budget.
Can I just, I suggest maybe the next joint cemetery committee meeting you all belong to, because
When is
you'll have representation there from the other
What-
parishes. that you
When
have.
is it?
I personally don't know.
It's April.
So it'll be, there'll be one in the next couple of months or something.
April, I think.
Can you copy me in on the
Yeah.
day, because I get
It's worth popping out.
Cemetery committee.
Yeah. Be happy to move on.
Yeah.
Pretty definition of how
Okay. I guess you're back to you, Alan. Neighbourhood plan.
Yeah, Jesus. Right,
Just call this
okay.
Alan,
Well, it's
sure.
quite a positive one.
Yeah, it
Is
is.
it in budget?
Right, neighbourhood plan. Where are we in the neighbourhood plan? We have made an application and been successful in that application for technical support funding for a housing needs assessment. That we knew from last time. That's been approved. It wasn't approved last time. It is now. I've got a Microsoft Teams meeting the week after next to get that kicked off. There's been an article in the Bridge, and also part of that article put on Facebook. We've had some response on that. Comments being made that nothing that we didn't know already, that hadn't been made already by other people, of that the housing needs are basically starter homes for young people and bungalows for older people. So that's been said before. I think we've got the broad support of the community to do that. So I think we can push ahead on that one. And we've had 2 volunteers to get involved. One is Kevin, I can't forget his name. Westlake. Kevin Westlake, who's the architect guy who's down on Main Street.
Next door.
Next door to Gemma. And also a lady called V, can't think of her surname, I think it's Pollock maybe, who lives, she's quite a senior person at the Durham University, so I think she'll be a great asset. She's going to be, and hopefully, I've sent out an email to everybody and said, shall we get together the week after next to talk about it? No, week after the week after next to talk about it. And hopefully we can kick that off and I can start delegating work to people who come forward as volunteers to work on that, which will be very good. To try and progress it on. There was one other thing, I can't remember what it was now. No, gone. Sorry, senior moment. So that's it.
Was the meeting that you had, was that with about the housing needs assessment?
That was with the technical support for the housing needs assessment.
There wasn't anything additional to report on that meeting?
Not really. They didn't talk about needing an environmental assessment as well for the impact of the.
That's triggered by the housing needs assessment.
That's true by the housing needs assessment.
An SEA, strategic environment assessment.
Yes, yes. One of the aspects of it being parking, I hope our newest parish councillor may get involved in that, because I think parking on South View is a massive problem. So your input on that will be very welcome. Also on Main Street. Anyone got any questions about that?
Sounds like it's going really well.
I think this housing needs thing could actually have quite a profound impact, and I'm slightly overwhelmed by the whole process because it's a massive can of worms. And
they'll do all of the actual labour pulling all of that together, I think.
But
given
the undertaking we've made to the county council to consider social housing, it may be the case that this uncovers a need for social housing, and we can allocate land. Not entirely sure how it works with who actually owns that land.
It doesn't matter, Alan. So what happens is you put forward, it's a bit like the course, when the county council does its course possible sites, it's a bit like that. So we allocate land. I mean, you would have it's polite to have a conversation with the landowners so that they're not surprised when they see their bit of land named in the plan. But we would basically say, what it is we would identify what we thought of as suitable or appropriate sites, and we would say, we will look preferentially on sites, on planning applications that are on these locations. So then that can really benefit the landowner, because obviously if they're minded to have a development and their site is identified, great, because they know that the planning application's got a bit of weight behind it because it's already almost pre-supported by the parish council by virtue of being identified. So we don't have to own the sites, we just have to, it's polite, as I say, it's diplomatic to contact the landowners to let them know that their site is potentially being identified. But I think most landowners wouldn't see it as a negative thing, really.
Gemma, do you still have that map that we compiled at the fair about a land owned by a certain local wealthy landowner?
I think
Because
the big one.
The big one, and there were ticks on it.
I don't know, did you take that one, Claire, or did I? I know where it will be, it's somewhere.
I think it's your house, sorry, but I'll have a look if you don't share with it.
So there's going to be a bit of a negotiation there, I think, because
Conversation.
he's got other plans for the village, basically.
Yeah. 2 seconds. I'm seeing you. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's everything I can think of at the moment.
One thing, Alan, can you jump on the Facebook tomorrow and answer a couple of comments back?
It seemed to me that they didn't need commenting back. If you think they did, then
I think
yeah.
there's the confusion between Davison Avenue garages and Moldshoff garages, because there is a set of garages on Davison Avenue which weren't ever in consideration by county for developing.
So you panic people.
You panic people a
But
little
the second
basically.
site of garages is under attack and it's not.
Oh,
So yeah,
Do you see what the
there's-
problem is?
entirely unintentional.
Yeah.
We
understood that.
Go on
but yeah, maybe it's just something you can just put a comment back saying
then. Right.
you're
Okay.
not a mistake, sorry for the confusion.
Right. Okay.
And yourself?
It was just about the land. Remember when we did the neighbourhood plan, so previously there was a map, a survey done for a call for land from landowners. I can't remember what the map is called, but there is.
Is it the Schlar?
Yeah,
Sure.
we've seen that.
So that will actually inform council of the land that's available.
We've already got the updated
Yeah.
Shara, haven't we?
Yeah.
We have a link to that.
Yeah, and it has changed
Yeah.
over the past few years since we last looked at it.
The council are quite relaxed about it as well. You look at it and think, oh my God, they're going to build over the entire village, and actually they're not. And there's
But I
all
think
kinds of
I
considerations.
think
in it.
my understanding is with the Schlar, it's relatively easy to get your bit of land onto it. It doesn't necessarily mean it's actually
Yes.
realistic
Yes.
or suitable or appropriate for building.
Yes.
Or appropriately considered.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. No? Well done, Alan. Biodiversity.
Right, so well the main thing that's been going on with
You
that
can read it.
no. Is the Coquet Rivers Action Group, which has now got its official
Crag, I like
name,
that.
Crag, so it really is starting to lift off the ground and could potentially be quite exciting. So as we were saying before, I had got a spiel. I'll try and not go with the bits that I've already said, but I'm going to have to, I think. So generally, when we started talking about this in the biodiversity group, it was something that we wanted to address. It was something that people from Felton had started to express a concern about the water quality, about the sewage outflow going out into the river and things. There was other people that were having similar thoughts up and down the Coquet, and other groups that were starting to have murmurings and things. So things we didn't kind of get to approach it in the way that we originally planned to, because they were generally already on it. And the main one was Rothbury WI, who did came very close to getting a grant for tests. So when we first started out, it was looking at supporting them and extending the project down the Coquet. And they had looked at particular test kits and got them budgeted out and things. Unfortunately, though, they weren't successful in their planning application, so their grant application. So it came back to what my original plan was to go through the environmental agency. Now, the environmental agency don't give out grants; they give out equipment and support. So what we've now got, and I think it's going to be later this month, we just finalised the meeting, and the lady from the Environmental Agency is going to be coming and issuing us with 10 kits which I've negotiated, which are going to be, we need to divvy them out between groups that are down from Procton down to Amble. And we are just, at the moment, we've got a meeting later. I think they're having a meeting next week with JD, who's on Felton Parish Council, and members of CAN. Unfortunately, I can't attend it, so that they can pinpoint where we actually want to have our testing sites and do the health and safety assessments. So as we previously said and discussed, they are acting. The Felton Group is acting under Felton Parish Council with regards to who they are and why they're doing it and things. The issue the group have at the moment though is because we are newly formed and forming and we want to start activity as soon as possible, we really were looking for an umbrella. At the moment we have been taking it in turns to pay for hall hire, and obviously we, kind of one of them under the biodiversity group, can have paid a couple of times, and the Rivers Trust have paid as well, but we would need regular users used to get the preferential rate. So
And is it just the biodiversity committee, the parish council that has that? The other groups are presumably
no,
not?
can do,
Oh, can do as well.
yeah. But I'm quite keen to keep a hold of this aspect of it and things as much as possible, and I don't want it just coming out of Fran's pocket. They are saying that they were happy to do the tests and things, but overall the kits have been issued to me.
As in your capacity as a
Yeah,
councillor?
as in my capacity as a councillor, and looking at how we're going to distribute these out. Now, there's quite a few other river projects that are going on in the northeast. The Wylam Clean Time, there's one up in Berwick, and then there's, I can't remember the other one was, but they're all very, very highly localised, and very just within on a close community level. This project is possibly the first in the northeast which is looking at such a wide geographical area, we're looking at the whole stretch of the river. And I think we could argue, well, why do we want to, as Felton Parish Council, kind of, support this and be a can't remember what the right term is. What did I use before, Claire? I put it on the agenda. Sorry. Yeah, as an umbrella for them, and that is simply because, firstly, like what happens further up the coast here has an effect on the quality of water here, and what we do here has an effect further down. And I think it's that responsibility that we have, also because the sewage works that we've got here it is in Felton Parish Council, but it also is feeding in from different parishes that are coming here. So if we can have a cooperative project that's covering like a large geographical area and work together, we're much more likely to be able to gain the scientific data that we want to be looking at, and more clout if we need to be looking at change. So the testing kits that the Rothbury WI were originally looking at were testing for, they've got, it was a composite kit, I can't remember what the name of it is now. We couldn't get that, and it does differ slightly with the ones that we're getting from the Environmental Agency, and the one that we're getting from them is more limited than what we had originally wanted. However, the fact that we're getting 10 kits, what it's going to do is give us a baseline starting point to start the project off and get people testing. And it isn't just about the water testing, it's also about the observational data that people are gathering that the Environmental Agency are really interested in. But what's really nice about this as well is that we're not just being limited to do what the Environmental Agency do. Once we get it established and start kind of collaborating the data, we can actually add into it with other things, such as the invertebrate surveys, which is probably one of the biggest things, but that takes more time and commitment as well. So the idea was if we could start off with these 10 sites at the co-care and we get that established, then we can start to add into it with time. Now there's a couple of people that are looking into grants at the moment to add into it so that we can extend the equipment that we're using in the testing sites as well. So I know that Brinkburn are looking at the windmill money, and I was going to be approaching the Duke of Northumberland for some of the grants that they've got going there. And what this would look at is looking at getting potentially more of the same tests or adding in additional testing as well, because there's things like ammonia that you can test for, and there's E. coli. But the E. coli tests themselves, they cost significant amounts of money, which we could potentially look at in the future. So there's all of this going on, but the general gist at the moment is we want to get these 10 kits up and running so that people are doing monthly tests, and also we can consider testing in the case of a known incident. So when somebody kind of contacts us from Felton saying, I can see sewage being pushed out into the co-kit, we can actually consider going and testing at that point, even if it's not one of our monthly testings. And the information that we gather, we will be keeping ourselves and collaborating, but it also will be going on to the Environmental Agency app as well. So it's kind of like a double barrel of what we're doing with it. And Jamie Day, who's on Felton Parish Council, he is willing to do data analysis for us as well for the whole project. And we're looking at something that is potentially going to be going on for years and will evolve. So that's what our hope is, but I think everyone's quite reluctant at the moment to set up something kind of independent, as I'm going to say before, about a legal entity and things, because we need to actually see if this is going to work to start with. The Environmental Agency are very, very keen on it because they launched their big citizen science campaign, which is generally in short is that they're not being given the funding to go out and do the field work that they would like to be doing, so they're getting members of the public to volunteer to do it, which is why that they were very keen to be getting involved with this and having us doing it. So really what this was to explore if Felton Parish Council firstly is happy for me to book the room for meetings, and we're talking about going down to, at the moment we've probably been having a meeting every 4 to 6 weeks, which as I say the costs have been covered by, we've taken it in turns to pay for them. But for quarterly meetings for us to pay for it under the
Do we want to pay for all the meetings or?
I think at least quarterly, so that we could look, and we put that under the Felton Biodiversity group meeting, but I would extend it into having the Rivers group there. There's other people that are kind of like satelliting off to have other small meetings, obviously for their locality and things. And the meeting that's going on the next week or so will just be a field meeting, it won't need anything. The other thing is if in the time between us actually managing to set up as a legal entity and getting bank accounts and things, we do get a grant if we are happy to hold that grant, if we are saying that it is Felton Parish Council acting on behalf of this group of CRAG. To be quite honest, after what I've just sat through with the cemetery committee, I'm almost reluctant to be even asking this. But if you are happy for me to be, say, the biodiversity funding to fund at least the room hire, that would be really, really helpful.
I think the question would be, because obviously in order, you won't be able to get a grant without having a legal entity status, so effectively what we're asking is, can the parish council be the applicant on behalf of the bigger group, therefore simple funds, and my concern would be that therefore, if the parish council has to be the applicant, and therefore receive, because it's going to receive the money, then the parish council, that money is the parish council's money and would need to be spent in accordance with our, so what I'm sort of saying is, your group would need, the CRAG group would need to be aware that you would be then buying in, as it were, to the financial requirements that the council has to follow, like the 3 quotes or the, decisions at meetings, like at parish council meetings rather than at CRAG meetings. I think, but I think as long as your group understood that, and as obviously if it's it's intended as a short-term stopgap, basically, so you can kind of get yourselves up and running.
Yeah, because there is a chance that it will fall flat on its face, and I think that's always a possibility. But I would like to think otherwise, with the amount of enthusiasm that's there at the moment. It would be sad if it did. I don't think it will, because I think a lot of people that are very dedicated to it. But I think it's the complexity of the fact that we've got numerous different groups all involved, but it's sat more within the remit of what our original plan was, to try and bring everybody in and contact other parishes and everything, and have a joint project and things, whether or not we could work with it in that way.
Don't look at me.
I think, no, but I think,
Well, obviously the CAN group has been involved with a lot of things going on in and around, and obviously they're very proficient at what they do and very obviously they are a legal entity, and there might be more leeway within their group to actually sort of do the things that you're sort of talking about. I'm not saying that not support their efforts, but in terms of actually sort of the funding and monies, then some of the constraints that the clerk has discussed and would necessarily apply once they're
It's been discussed with Cam.
Yeah.
But I did say that I would
Ask the
ask
question.
here tonight, and Cam wanted me to. So
I think my concern is that, the scrutiny that we get, like we get a 10-page document sent to the auditor for benches, stuff like that. It's just, it opens up, and I wouldn't want to have that burden on Crag, basically. It would be my opinion on it. Sort of
actually agree.
let the paying using the biodiversity committee kind of quarterly meetings and stuff like that. I think for the whole hire and stuff like that would be great, and there's some support that we can give.
Okay.
But I wouldn't want to burden them with what we have to deal with at the council, basically.
The parish council have no control over their financial responsibility as well. So if they did something that was we didn't agree with, we wouldn't have any control.
Yeah.
But I would totally be in support of the parish council helping the biodiversity group committee make this happen. So if there was anywhere that I could be, as a parish councillor, be involved as far as fundraising or or trying to offer support or help or time, then I would definitely be interested myself.
Could you turn into charity?
Yeah. I think also there's something you could look at is
Okay, we'll look at
Biodiversity.
alternatives, and I personally think that there will be a better alternative to this. But if you are happy for biodiversity group to cover the room hire, and also what we discussed about the insurance, that they're acting under the instruction of our parish
So
council.
what I understand is from, I will double check, because I don't want it to fall in the river and to be a problem. But my understanding in terms of, I've asked questions about volunteers before of the insurance company, my understanding is as long as there are appropriate risk assessments and safety policies in place, and that they are clearly acting under a schedule, so if they're deemed to be volunteering on behalf of the biodiversity committee, so our biodiversity committee members effectively insured to go and to do that.
Okay.
Is that was approaching the village directly and asking for regular use of those?
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we just say
As long as you're
Crag,
going to have 4 meetings in a year, there's every likelihood that
okay,
will be
right, okay,
regular
we'll
use.
see if we can do that.
yeah.
So the insurance that you're talking about in terms of the volunteers, is that just volunteers that are involved in the Felton area? Or
Yes, I think yes.
Yeah.
Each group would be responsible for its own insurance. So what we talk about at Felton is that the Felton. So Gemma mentioned earlier, she said that the Felton section of the river is going to be tested by biodiversity committee members and volunteers. So they would come under the parish council's insurance, and they would be basically the biodiversity committee would take responsibility for making sure that the risk assessment was in place and the safe people had received an appropriate safety briefing and that they were following the schedule set out by the committee, and then they would be part of the committee's basically volunteer team.
Right.
I think that, and I think from my understanding from having previously sought the insurance company that's what they require, but as I say, I'm going to speak to them about specific circumstances once Gemma comes.
Each of the different groups are sorting out their insurance.
Yeah.
So I think the WI had it, and then there's Warkworth Green Matters have got it, and so it's ongoing. So we're not responsible for anyone else apart from the.
So once the length of the river is divided up into the test sections, each section will be managed by, operated by a particular group, and that group will be responsible for its tests and its insurance.
Cool. Has anybody got any other questions?
No, sounds good.
Sounds good.
All sound very good, yeah. Committees and working groups.
Just to point out, obviously, thanks to the member of the public who just added the property committee meeting minutes that are included are in draft at the moment because they haven't been back to the property committee.
So, Recfield, our outline plan application has been submitted for putting the building down the Recfield. We've had some feedback from highways and some from the ecology environment. Amazingly, what was her name? Andrew Francis actually responded.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've had some of that, and we're still working on that, but it's in workings. Kevin's done a good job of continuing conversation with planning and things. So
He's been very helpful.
Yeah,
His
he's been
assistance has been
wonderful.
really appreciated.
yeah, yeah.
I have a question about the ramp, the
Yeah.
Riverside ramp.
Yeah.
Where are we on that?
So
Rattling.
just sent round.
Tom?
Rattling on.
Yeah.
The ramp
Has he actually started?
Genuinely,
Oh, yeah. Last time I looked, there was
Speaking
nothing.
of it.
So,
Yeah, I looked-
okay, excellent.
I looked on Tuesday and I was looking across the river to see what was going on as the guy was walking down the road with the spirit levels.
So yeah, so I
It's
think
rattling on.
there was an email that came out about the structural report. Like Jamie had got the verbal, it was all the verbal report was that everything was structurally sound. He's suggesting that if we wanted a written report, there was a fee to pay, and he thought that given our need to show that we've jumped through hoops, it might be worth us paying for that. But obviously that's a decision for us to make, so that'll go on the agenda.
I think it's going to be worth doing that at the end because you need to get a sign off.
Exactly.
For purpose
Yeah.
reports.
So yeah, exactly.
I spoke to him yesterday, and he has said that whilst he's been working down there, he is going to suggest that we consider whether or not we would be allowed to put any area of semi-hard standing at the bottom of the ramp to actually almost mark where the ground is meant to be, that could be swept off or protect things, because he says otherwise we're going to end up
I
with
think originally it was like that because there was some sort of that sort of wire down, but I think some
and he suggested that for us to consider once it's complete.
I guess that
Does he, so a hard stand option would be his recommendation, of some sort.
The ongoing maintenance there, like after the river's been flooded, because there's quite an expenditure there, it's probably worth having someone to do this to make sure it's clear after.
Yeah.
Because it's the silt build-up's really the issue, isn't it?
No, definitely.
Another question? Red phone box?
sorry, that's still on my desk to chase up with the.
It's looking very sad.
I know it. I know. I thought that the other day, Alan. I do with
It does look sad.
It's with me.
Okay. What about the bin from Glaston's?
Yes.
What was that? Where did that go?
There's one at there's a double bin outside the shop, so
One
it used
Right.
to be a single bin at the shop, and
Right.
it's now a double. And the single bin that wasn't the shop was put up at the entrance of Cocoa Park on the dog walking loop, so you've probably availed yourself of it and not realised it was. It doesn't look new because it came from outside the shop.
Alright.
So it increased the capacity for dog waste
Because that was,
at the entrance to Cocoa Park.
right, the one that's outside the shop, that was quite expensive, wasn't it?
Yes, it
That was
was.
like 700 or 800 quid.
Yeah.
Right.
That's yeah.
And it's,
Is there anything in the budget for next year for doing the dog poo bins?
Yes,
Because
there's quite a healthy budget for the street furniture. It's in the
Right.
property minutes.
Because they're looking really sad. They make the phone box look quite good.
Yeah. And some of them are constantly overflowing. That one at Windy Gap is
Yeah.
always overflowing.
Yeah. Well, they all are. I hope,
Yeah.
really. Even the bins on the rec field were overflowed at one point. So
Yeah, it had a lot of builders bags in them.
There was one of the last storms, and then pre-Christmas, I think, when the collection, I think they diverted the resources to go and empty them because they missed the empties that day basically.
Yeah.
One of the Friday before Christmas or something, or
They've had some-
around about that time,
Right.
and then back in January they missed another one.
Right.
But they generally catch up with it
Right.
a few days later.
So is there a need for more bins?
I think from, I think we, we think about it, the one at Colquette has, even though there's 2 bins there now, both of them have been very full. It might be worth a double bin put in there, which then frees up the single bin there and the dog poo, the waste bin, to then potentially one get moved to halfway round the loop if we consult with the landowner if we can put it there.
Most of them, well,
There are lots of bins around though.
I think though
It's just whether they're
I
in the
think there's
right
been a real
place.
problem. I think there's been quite a number of problems with emptying them. I'm not saying that that's the only route for cause, and I do think that we need more bins, but I've had a number of people say to me at various points, this bin's too full, this bin's been missed, you know, and so on. And I do feel like there's been quite a few issues with the regular bin collection, and I did wonder whether there had been a new operative in because they kept missing a couple.
The frustrating thing though is this bin's full, I'll just leave it beside it.
Yeah.
It's littering.
Yeah.
You know, actually, it's your dog, and you can find an empty bin if you try hard enough.
And I think I've
It's
said
not just dog waste that goes in the dog.
No,
bin.
well, no.
No.
And I'm not too sure who's done it, but somebody does put black bin liners by the bins. There's certainly one up at Coca and certainly one up in the Gap over Christmas.
Just need, was that because it hadn't been emptied though? the bin?
Yeah,
So
sort
this
of.
I
So
think,
that could be, there is someone in Colquette that I think,
Litter picks.
no, not even litter picking, they empty their garden once a month, I would say, and take the poo bags there.
I've seen that now.
So
Oh.
I'm assuming
that's
it could be that person. I say once a month, but the amount of poo bags that they take, it's considerable. So it could be that.
Could be.
but yeah, but and the property management committee has got it on their ongoing review. They're sort of
constant
progressing,
reviewing the bins and
they're
stuff.
progressing it gradually, and they've got £5,000 as of April the 1st
Can
to
we get,
spend
if
on.
we get poo bins, can we get the green ones?
Yes. Yeah.
Not just have proper
I think we should have proper
But
bins.
if we just put,
if it's space, because
I'm not sure that message gets through entirely. Does it that you can put it in the other bin?
There are stickers you can get for them, so that show that it's a mixed waste bin. So we maybe look at that, and because I think the stickers have peeled off a few bins, so that we can maybe do a replacing.
They were looking old about 15 years ago.
Yeah. But they do their purpose, don't they? The whole
Clean
waste.
up after your dog. Yes. Yes.
there is no poo fairy.
Yeah.
That's not like.
One more. Much as I hesitate
No,
to
no,
mention
no.
it, when are we going to install the benches for the cemetery? Because they just sit there.
They are sitting there. The weather has, yeah.
I think we're going to speak to Peter when he's got availability,
Right.
and then potentially he'll speak to the property management committee, and we can go and help him move it into the vicinity of it. Because then once it's there, he can move it himself. But getting them physically up there will be a 2-man lift.
Right.
Is there housekeeping involved with that though? We
Yeah.
can't speak to Peter.
But yeah,
Well,
that's
yeah.
I've said to Anne tonight she can speak to Hazel to speak to Peter to
Why
I'll
can't you
speak
speak
to
to
Peter.
Peter?
yeah.
Because Peter's line manager is the person who must instruct Peter.
Oh, I see. Oh, I've got it. Yeah, yeah.
And I've had my collar felt for asking him to do something before.
Right.
We're
So is
planning
it,
it's moving.
It will get done.
it's going to go on the grass, and what? And then you fix them together around the tree to sort of keep them
Around the
secure.
tree, there'll be a bit of trimming of the holly around the tree as well,
Right,
and maybe a little levelling of ground if needed.
And we talked
stuff like
about, at the moment, there is like, there is a sort of clear path leading to it. So we
Yeah.
said what we'll do is assess it for the first few months.
Potentially
and then
cut
if
that
we
at
need
a
to-
lower height just so that it's more obvious that it's a path.
And then assess whether we need to actually put a hard standing path in or not.
Okay.
Do you want to mention the DFID progress?
Yeah, DFIB progress, we've got the DFIB.
We arrived like literally something like 2 days before Christmas. So.
Yeah, currently in secure storage. We've got a bracket, kindly fabricated by Chris to attach it to the pole, which we've cleared the pole of the end of the vegetation. And
We've had an offer to do it for cost, from an electrician to install for cost. So
Yeah.
that was really it'll be quite an easy one because it just requires a few, something.
A few spur.
I was going to say that and then I thought, no, that's not quite good.
I have confidence in you have electrical knowledge.
So it's exactly,
Potentially.
exactly. So the electrician had a look and said that it was there's already spare fuse space and everything, so it'll fit in with what we've already got there. So it's a relatively
There's
straightforward
already a
job.
way of running.
Exactly.
Somebody was ripping it out the other day.
No. So we just need to.
So that's just going to be as soon as possible.
Okay.
Do you want to drop that off from the house this side? I'll get that mounted.
Just on that point, the other suggestion is that I received from someone was to get a sticker for the box with the what 3-word location, because apparently that's being used more and more by the emergency services, so that when someone rings up, they can say, "I'm live at this location," and it'll give them.
Do it from your PC and not your mobile phone.
Will do.
You get a different result.
Really?
Is that an issue though? Because then people are going to be on mobile phone and giving location from mobile phone.
But if it's on the sticker, on the
yeah.
on the
Yeah,
box,
if it's on the box, they'll be able to say, I'm at this location.
so that'll either be inside the window or on the box, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work, but
Probably
we'll have a look.
be-
Once it's up, we'll have a look.
Yeah, we can get
So not an identification number on the deed.
There is, but apparently, now more and more, apparently when they say where are you, if you can give them what 3
We
words.
do no harm having it there, would it?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
It's,
Lot three words is great, we use it all the time.
no, that's good.
14 correspondence.
No, it's 13. I think we covered that anyway with the various meetings we
Yeah.
discussed.
Just the village hall,
Village hall.
start my toilet with the.
Oh yes, that's when I got an email.
So-
But that's not going to affect like
It
room
shouldn't
height,
affect-
just affects
no, it
just
shouldn't
the
affect
toilets, and there
us.
should always be a toilet available.
Yeah.
That's good.
The only thing is that they are using this as a thoroughfare sometimes during the day, so we might end up with furniture misplaced or something. But it shouldn't be.
Nice.
It's good and bike, but
14 correspondence received.
Am I the only one that couldn't make head nor tail of the letter about the contract for the land for the doctor's surgery? Because I couldn't follow that at all.
It was very strange, wasn't it?
It was extremely complicated. I couldn't understand
know.
it.
I think
It was
there's
legally.
I think
A lot of legal jargon in it, but I think the gist of it I got was they agreed with pretty much all of it. It just
they have pushed back. I had a conversation with him where he has pushed back on a couple of things. This is where it's kind of got to. I was going to suggest, obviously, it came in too late on to this agenda. What I thought would be the best thing to do would be to see if he can give us like a Zoom meeting, Teams call, just for any questions that anybody has, so that they feel confident coming to a meeting to say yes, I'm happy with the final terms, and it just gives people a chance to ask those.
I think for that help that we haven't had all the format changes.
I know. Is that, are you happy for me to sort of arrange that?
I can make my question very simple. What? Exactly. I really didn't. I tried to read it on my mobile phone and failed
go
miserably.
on the computer. It'll be a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
And then you can have the doc, because it's talking about a document that's attached to it as well. So
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
That's probably
So
why I couldn't
that's-
understand it then.
a bit of the issue, I think. Anything else there? What was the Hyde Park farm one?
That was
That
an email from a resident, just drawing our attention to the planning application, which I already didn't know about. We weren't originally consulted. It's been bounced around a bit because it's technically in Felton Parish, but Thurston obviously were quite interested in it because of where it is. It's visible from a wide scope. Accrington, although it's in their parish, are actually the least affected because of the live land. So it's been drawn to my attention by a couple of people, and we've now been, we're not originally on the list of consultees, but we've now received the consultation letter, so they've obviously extended the consultation group, because, yeah, which is why it's now appeared onto our agenda. So that this was just an email from a resident who lives in an affected area.
I understand it's going to severely impact on the traffic through Thursday.
Well, they've put in,
That's what all the comments are about.
Thurston has put in an objection based on traffic and infrastructure and the suitability of the roads. I think they've talked about the visual impact of the stack and the steam that's coming out. So they're saying it would be like, I don't know how true it is, but it would be like